The major difficulty was on Ashura with the shahadats that took place there. But the more difficult thing now is happening afterwards. Carrying on the message, starting majalis, starting azadari, and getting people to understand what exactly took place there and how do we come back to Islam after this. Because on top of that leads to Ashura, to allow the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Holy Prophet, to get killed, to be, viciously murdered like that, with Muslims watching and Muslims participating. So Imam now has to take people like this and try to take them back towards some level of Islam. This is not an easy task. It's not going to be just sitting around and being sick and crying. There's something that the Imam did. We have to figure out what that is. And some people will say, yes, okay, we know about the Imam's Sahifa Sajadiyah. Okay, that's good. We know Risalatul Huquq. That's also good. But again, these are longer sort of discussions and riwayat and du'as that are contained over longer periods of time. It's not the Imam, just kind of sitting down, writing a book and then giving it to his Shias or the Muslims. No. So even that's not our subject for tonight. But even that, where did this Sahifa even come from? Where did this Risalatul Huquq come from? Why did the Imam focus on those points? Why don't you see any of those discussions or these kind of du'as, these kind of munajat, this sort of risalat, why aren't they done by the other members of the Ahlul Bayt? So why specifically Imam Sajjad, why would he do something like that? Again, these are things that for Shias, we should know these things. Because this will tell us exactly what was happening to the Muslims at that time. More importantly, what was the relationship between the Imam and the Muslims, right? That's something that we need to know as far as Shias are concerned, and the general Muslims. What was going on with that population? You and I, without a doubt, know that the mission of Karbala was a success. You ask anybody, says, were they successful in Karbala? They'll say, of course, Islam was saved, all right? It got its najat, it was saved there. Like, okay, if it was successful, show me the success. What happened afterwards? Yazid still reigned for a few years after that, right? The Umayyads continued on a few more after that. And then after that, Abbasids continued. They took hold of that and they ran. I said, okay, is that success? If success is defined by the Ahlul Bayt taking the rightful Khilafah that always belonged to them, well, okay, none of them got that. Nobody had that. Is that success? No. Okay, so then what are we talking about here? Oh, were the Imams freer? Even there, it wasn't the case. Imam Sajjad was under surveillance. He was being watched. Even if we talk about the other 5th, 6th, 7th, go forward, they were sometimes even treated worse than Imam Hussein was by Yazid. They were under surveillance. The Shias were slaughtered there too. I said, okay, so what success are we talking about here? So we have to try to figure out what exactly was happening at that time. What were some of the movements? What were some of these battles that were taking place? And why isn't it, because some people will ask, why didn't Imam Sajjad just go around? He told everybody what happened in Karbala, right? Everybody was crying and mourning. People in Kufa, when they heard what happened, they were crying, they were screaming and moaning. They said, why did we allow this to happen? When they got back to Medina, then they told the people there, who were more Shia friendly, we would say, right? More friendly to the Ahlul Bayt. Even there, what happened in Medina? And that's what I want to focus on tonight. Is Medina is where you do see one place where there is some discussion, there's something that happened after the fact. Now, is it because of the Ahlul Bayt? Is it because of Imam Sajjad? Did Imam Sajjad join them in whatever they did? Or was there something else going on? And so what I want to talk about tonight is something known as the Battle of Harra. A very famous battle that took place that you and I should definitely know. And other people who still to this day somehow defend Yazid, I don't know how, but they do. Or even other people who remain neutral say, look, you have to defend something like this. If you don't know what this is, then you need to learn this history. Because this is very, very important to understand, number one, what was happening during the Khilafah of Yazid after Karbala, what was happening among the Muslims who heard about what happened in Karbala, who were there face to face with Imam Sajjad and the other Ahlul Bayt, and what was the Ahlul Bayt's response to all of this. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this battle of Harra, it took place about 2 years after Karbala. Now, Harra just means rocky terrain or black rocky terrain. So this battle, eventually, it takes place in the northeast area of Medina. And that area was called Harra just because it happened to be rocky. That was it, right? So some of you maybe have heard some of these stories before. Maybe you didn't know it was called the Battle of Harra. Yazid Mal'un had sent his forces there, I think between 5,000 to 27,000 forces, under the leadership of somebody by the name of Muslim ibn Uqba, a very vicious person. So he had sent them there, and after the battle, the Muslims of Medina had basically lost. It was a battle pretty much between the Yazidi forces and everybody in Medina. That was pretty much what happened. The Medinans lost, and then Medina was sieged. It was attacked and almost wiped out completely. And we'll get to that, why that's important. Now, we have to figure out this. Let's go back a step first. Why did this battle take place? Was there some sort of revolution? Were people upset? What was happening there? You ask some people, before they do the research of history, they'll think, okay, after the Ahlul Bayt had returned to Medina, they had obviously told everybody what happened, that this is how we were treated. This is what happened in Karbala. This is what happened in Kufa. This is what happened in Sham. So people expect that, okay, the people of Medina, who were always supporters and lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, they must have gotten upset and went to go fight Yazid. But that's not what happened. They heard the story, and some of them felt bad, they cried, they recited poetry, but they didn't really do much after that. What did happen were, there was 3 possible causes for why the people of Medina ended up wanting to fight with the forces of Yazid. Right? There's 3 possible reasons. The first is just in general, the corruption of somebody like Yazid himself. Now, what happened is this. At that time, the current governor of Medina was somebody by the name of Uthman ibn Muhammad, right? When they find out, right, when they see the Ahlul Bayt come back and they see what happens to them, a lot of them are in shock. They say, look, we know Yazid wasn't the best, but to allow for something like this to happen to the Ahlul Bayt, we don't believe that. In a sense, they didn't take the word of the Ahlul Bayt, if you can believe it. I mean, they believed them, but they said, that's not enough. You would think that the hujjaj of Allah, the proofs of Allah on the earth, they would trust them and that's it. People would be up in arms. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case. Many of them said, no, we have to go investigate ourselves. We have to go see if Yazid is really like this or if it was somebody else. Even to this day, if again, you try to blame Yazid for everything, what do some people end up doing? They say, no, it wasn't Yazid. It was Ibn Ziyad. It was his fault. No, actually, it wasn't even Ibn Ziyad. It was Umar ibn Sa'd. No, actually, it wasn't him. It was Shimr. They're just trying to pass on the blame to somebody else. We say, look, all of this, we have our wilayah, they have their wilayah too. And their system of wilayah, which is a false, batil one, all of them are also responsible. But people back then, unfortunately, because they didn't have this strong concept that you and I do, of proper wilayat, of proper imamat, of proper leadership in khilafat, they didn't have this. And even to this day, again, you see some Muslims, whoever's in charge, it's okay, it doesn't really matter. Put anybody who becomes the leader. Who cares? Let them lead a country. It doesn't matter what their practice is, how good their aqidah is. It doesn't matter. So for many Muslims at that point, they're like, okay, let Yazid run. It's okay. It's not a big deal. So when they see the Ahlul Bayt coming back after Karbala, like in this situation, they said, something's wrong here. So what Uthman ibn Muhammad does is says, okay, again, the governor, he says, I'm going to take at least 10 of the tribal leaders of Medina. I'm going to send you all to Yazid in Sham, and I want you to go see and investigate for yourself. Is Yazid really like this? Is he this bad? Or, na'udhu billah, are the Ahlul Bayt just exaggerating? Or is the blame on somebody else? We have to figure out what happened here. Now again, the first problem right away is they should have just taken the word of the Ahlul Bayt, but they didn't. Khair. They decide to go and send these tribal leaders here. Now one of these tribal leaders is somebody by the name of Abdullah ibn Handala. Now that name is important because Handala himself was a very righteous companion, somebody who became shaheed in Uhud. Right? So now his son Abdullah, he's one of these leaders that's going there. So he was known to be somebody who was a good Sahaba. Right? So people would trust whatever, if he's going, okay, we'll trust what he has to say. So they go. Now what happens is this. Let me, if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So they go, and again, they have to go with all the sort of diplomatical formalities and ta'arufat and takallufat and all that, right? So they go, they're coming as a delegation from Medina. They're being received by Yazid. So Yazid, what's the expectation there? Yazid doesn't have this idea of, welcoming Muslims, right? He just says, okay, I do what I do. So he starts, allowing singers and dancers to come out. He gives them money and gold and bribes. He has people drinking, offers them drinks. So now all these tribal leaders are like, what is going on here? This is supposed to be a Muslim Khalifa. Like, what is happening? But of course, they're in that court. They can't really say anything there. So they just kind of accept the money, the gifts and everything. They figure they learned everything and then they come back. So once they return back to Medina, there's a big gathering. The governor, Uthman ibn Muhammad, is like, okay, what did you see? So this is where this person, Abdullah ibn Handala, now he responds. He says, we are coming back from somebody who is be-iman. No iman in him whatsoever. This is somebody who drinks sharab, he drinks khamr, he drinks wine. He plays music. He spends night with people who have no akhlaq, right? With people who are just in evil. He doesn't do salah, he abandons salah. He abandons namaz. Like, this is the person that we just went and saw. So, okay, you know what happened? He says, and then he went beyond that. He said, because he actually had taken his family with him. Abdullah ibn Handala. He had took his family with him. So when people said, what's going on? He said, look, if my family was not with me when I came in front of Yazid, I would have killed him right there. To see a fasiq like that, a munafiq like that running the Muslim empire. He's like, but I was with my family. I couldn't do anything like that. But he said, this is what we've seen. He said, and then somebody wanted to cause a fitna. They said, oh, but we heard you took gifts from him. We heard you took some bribes and some money from Yazid. So what's the story over here? He said, yes, what you heard is true. We took money, we took gifts. But you know why? Because now that we're back here, the first thing we need to do is take this, get an army together, get supplies together, get weapons and shields and armor, because we have to go and fight him. Like, this is our wajib duty. We have to go and kill somebody like this. He's not allowed to be a Khalifa of the Muslims. So immediately, then they said, okay, we understand. So they took this money, they took the wealth, and they began, everybody in Medina, except for a handful of people who were still Umayyad supporters, they started gathering together and saying, yeah, we're going to go fight. Immediately what happens then is that when people who were still the Umayyad supporters, like the governor and others, they said, okay, well, what's going to happen to us? So these raids start happening in Medina. They start going from house to house, chasing down everybody who's a supporter of the Umayyads. And they say, look, you have a choice. We can kill you right here, or we can exile you, and you never come back to Medina, but you have to agree that you're not going to give word to Yazid that we're going to come to Sham and take him out. And they agreed. They said, okay, just let us go, and we won't say anything. Of course, they lied. Obviously, they're the Umayyads. Of course, they're going to do that, right? They're Umayyad supporters. So they went and they told Yazid about this. They said, people in Medina are upset. They've got a lot of money. They have a lot of support, right? The people of Medina are not people to mess around with. They're gathering people together. They're going to come march against you. So you need to come and stop them before, right? The same thing that happened when Yazid had found out about what was happening in Kufa. He said, let me get somebody vicious like Ibn Ziyad, la'anatullah alayh. Let me go and preemptively strike first in Kufa. Right? Yazid knew that I have to do the same thing here then too. So he got somebody like Muslim ibn Uqba, another vicious person. He said, I'm giving you 5,000 to 27,000 soldiers. You go down and stop them before they come here. So that's what happened. Now let's go forward. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this is pretty much the first theory of how this battle ended up taking place, right? Because of this, people saw for themselves the corruption of Yazid, what kind of person he was, that he's not a practicing Muslim. Nothing in him is a Muslim at all. So the first misconception that we have to kind of put aside is that it's a direct result from the Ahlul Bayt. No, it wasn't, unfortunately. It would have been great if they just saw the status of the Ahlul Bayt, what had happened to them, and immediately went and fought. Unfortunately, people, I don't know what it was. This idea that they didn't have that real connection and love and ishq and hubb of the Ahlul Bayt. Because for any of us, if we had seen somebody like that, we would hope at least if we saw our Imam being attacked like that, a member of Ahlul Bayt being subjected to something like this, we should go and be up in arms right away. But unfortunately, they weren't like that. Which again goes to show you the lower nature of the Muslims of that time. That there's no izzat there. There's no ghairat. They should have went and fought them right away, but they didn't. The Kufans could have done something, they didn't do anything. The Basrans, they didn't do anything. All throughout, you see people just didn't do anything. Cowards, right? Cowardly people. They can get upset, they can cry. And you see that in the khutbahs that were given in Kufa, the 4 different khutbahs that were there, right? You have the 4 different khutbahs. One by Fatima al-Kubra, right? One of the daughters of Imam Hussein. One by Kulthum bint Ali, another daughter of Imam Ali. You have one by Bibi Zainab, and then one by Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And pretty much all their khutbahs were the same. They were saying, Ya al-Kufa, you're crying for us now. You were the ones who invited us here and allowed for Hussein to get slaughtered. Why are you crying now? Why are you getting upset now? This was your doing. But this is unfortunately the nature of Muslims. If these same groups of Muslims existed at the time of Saqifa, they were there at Ghadir, they were there at Saqifa. The same trend of just being cowards, giving bay'ah and then taking it back. As we say, doing khidlan, just betraying people, abandoning people. They give their bay'ah, they give their word, and they go back against it. It's a very vicious trait, a very deceitful, terrible trait to have within us. To say that I'm going to give my word, I'm going to offer my support, and then when the time comes to actually step up and do something, we say, no, it's too much now. It's very, very, very difficult to do something like that. And unfortunately, the Muslims throughout history have been like that, and they haven't been standing up to the zalimeen and the oppressors. So this was, again, one theory that was there, that the Muslims, they saw, at least the Muslims in Medina, they saw the corrupt nature of Yazid, then they said, okay, let's go to arms. That's theory number one. Theory number two, after a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Theory number two is not as, it's even worse than the first one. Most of you, if you've seen the Mukhtar series, you know Abdullah ibn Zubair, right? Again, not the best character. Somebody who's just after power, after money, after fame and status and notoriety. And they show this very well, I think, in the Mukhtar series. So they say that all of this battle of Harra, fighting against Yazid, was instigated by him. That he just wanted to fight Yazid for power, and he wanted to run Medina. And some say that Abdullah ibn Handala was his agent in Medina. So that's why all these kind of back and forths were happening there. And in fact, after this previous Umayyad governor, Uthman ibn Muhammad, after they got rid of him, who did they put in charge of Medina? This person, Abdullah ibn Handala, who in some sense was good, but unfortunately, his wilayat, his connection to the Ahlul Bayt wasn't strong enough, and he ended up allying himself with somebody like Abdullah ibn Zubair. Ibn Zubair is the one who made him the new governor of Medina. You see, what you see is a lot of people, although the end might be good, they might recognize who are the zalimeen, who are the fasiqeen, who are the people causing fitnas. In Islam, especially for Shia Islam, we don't say that the ends justify the means. We say, look, the way that you get there matters. Not every inqilab, not every movement, not every uprising is supported by the Ahlul Bayt. They say, look, if we give you ijazat, if we give you the word, if we start it, then yes, it's wajib for you to follow along. But if it's some other random person, especially if they have their own personal desire for power or money or fame, whatever it is, we're not going to support something like that, even if it's going to remove the zalimeen. And you see that throughout history, especially during the time of the Abbasids. Most of you know, right, at the time of Ma'mun, when after Harun passes, his father passes, right? Ma'mun and his brother Muhammad Amin, they're fighting amongst themselves for power, right? This is before Ma'mun forcibly brings Imam al-Rida to Khurasan, right? To that area, to Marv. When Muhammad Amin, Abbasi, and Ma'mun Abbasi are fighting amongst themselves for power, the Shias are like, okay, what do we do? You know, Ma'mun seems like he's more Shia friendly. Like he's in Iran and there's more Shia supporters there. That seems like it's a better thing. The Shias who knew better, they came to Imam al-Rida and said, what do we do? He said, we have nothing to do with the fight between fasiqeen and zalimeen. Let them fight it out. We don't have this idea of lesser of two evils. Let them duke it out. Let them handle it. Don't get involved in things like this. And this happened many times. People would end up having their arguments and their debates and their fights and battles, and the Imams would say, this has nothing to do with you, you stay away. But not every Shia, not every lover of Ahlul Bayt went and actually asked them. Some of them, like we still see to this day, they don't want to follow the advice of the maraji' and the ulama. They say, look, I have an aql, I can think for myself, I'm going to go do whatever I want. And what they end up finding out later on is that they made a huge mistake. Right? So we have this system of wilayah in place for a reason. It's so that we don't end up on Yawm al-Qiyamah being responsible for some of these big decisions. So over here, you see the same thing happen. Abdullah ibn Zubair, he's the one leading this thing. He, according to some, right? He's the one pushing for this. So then we come to this question then. When all of this stuff is happening, people are going out fighting the Umayyads, Ibn Zubair is sending people, go catch the Umayyads in Medina, kill them, send them out of Medina. What's happening? What's Imam Sajjad doing? What is the stance then of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam? They say Ibn Zubair and his followers, his group, they raided and attacked over 1,000 different Umayyad supporters in Medina. Again, in a way that we would say is probably not Islamically sanctioned. But again, people who don't have the wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, they're always going to make these kind of mistakes, right? So when this happens, when the people wanted to stay in Medina, they were looking for refuge. When they needed protection, whose house did they go to? They went to Imam Sajjad. Marwan ibn Hakam, the one who go back now to before, when Imam is in Medina. Imam Hussein's in Medina, and he is being threatened for his life. Who's the one who said, kill Hussein ibn Ali right now? Who was that? That was Marwan ibn Hakam. Now you fast forward, Marwan ibn Hakam comes to the door of Imam Sajjad and says, they're chasing me, they're after me. And I know, you know what I've done to your father, and that I am pretty much responsible for his killing. I led to it. But I also know that you're somebody who's amanatdar. Like if I ask for amanat, you're going to give it to me. They say everybody knew the status of the Ahlul Bayt. Even if they were enemies, they were involved in their killing and their shahadat and dhulm and everything. They said, look, but you are the people from the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Most, if not many of these individuals, all of them came to the house of Imam Sajjad and he gave them protection. And people were shocked, like, why are you protecting somebody like this? He said, look, when somebody asks us for protection, who are we? We are the Ahlul Bayt. We offer this kind of protection. This is the amanat that we provide. Now, if your akhlaq is not as good, that's fine. But the Ahlul Bayt's akhlaq is much, much higher than that. Their rahmah, their mercy is levels beyond what you and I can comprehend and understand. Even we have this famous story on the eve of Ashura, where they see Imam Hussein, kind of out in the battlefield, behind the tents, shedding tears and crying. Right? And according to some riwayat, one of the companions, some say it was Bibi Zainab, who went and asked, why are you crying like this? He said, Yabna Rasulullah, Ya Hussein, we know that you're not scared of the army. We know that. We know that you're not in fear. So why are you crying in such a way? Like, what's happening here? Look at the way the Imam responds. He says, look, these soldiers, these Umayyi soldiers, the soldiers of Yazid, of Umar ibn Sa'd, all of them, they're destined now for Jahannam and hellfire. He said, do you know why? He said, it's because of me. Because they're here to fight and kill me. He says, my heart can't handle that. I don't want them to go to hell on account of me. This is the love and muhabbat and ishq, and this is the mercy and rahmah that Imam has for people. He says, I'm going to come. I'm going to have Ali al-Akbar recite the adhan on Fajr. Maybe if they hear the sawt of Rasulullah again, maybe they'll change sides. On Asr Ashura, I'll bring my 6-month-old son in front of them. Maybe that'll change their minds. Every single point, the Imam is giving them opportunities to run. Even when Shimr, Mal'oon is on his chest, he's like, you can run away right now and I can guarantee you something. And I just leave here right now. Every single point, Imam is saying, no. These are the people who are descending from Rahmatul lil Alameen. It's a lot, we can't understand something like this. So of course, when people like the Umayyads, they know this. They're coming to the door of Imam Sajjad, we know the household that you're from. So that's why we're asking for protection. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So these are two theories so far that we've gone through. One was these elders, the tribal leaders, saw the corrupt status of Yazid. The second theory is that, no, this is just Abdullah ibn Zubayr trying to fight for power. The third theory is that it was just leftover blowback from Muawiyah's economic policies. I don't want to go into too many details, but Muawiyah had used Baytul Mal, as we all know, right? This was the, Umayyi policy of just handing out bribes, paying people off, sending money where it didn't belong. So when that happened, the Baytul Mal especially is designed for people, for example, Sadat, it's designed for people who are the fuqara, the masakin, that's what the Islamic funds are designed for. What happened was Muawiyah would take from there and give it to people that he liked. And when that happened, when you had these individuals in Medina who deserved or who are in need, right, fuqara, masakin, etc., what happened after, again, during the time of Muawiyah and Yazid, that Baytul Mal was being cut off from them. So, because they're now in poverty, economic distress, in a sense almost being sanctioned, if you want to put it that way, they say, well, because of this now, because of our social status, our financial status, what's happening to us, we have to go in and fight them and get rid of them. So this is not a very noble niyat that they have, right? It's only because their bread and butter is being attacked. And this is, again, if you look at these three reasons, it's very similar to the different reasons why the Kufans wrote letters to Imam Hussein as well. Some of us, there's so many misconceptions about that too. Some people think everybody in Kufa was a Shia. No, the vast majority were not Shias. The vast majority were not Alawis, what we would call them, right? No, it was a very small amount that were Shia. And even amongst those small amount that were actually Shia, whether you say 10, 15%, whatever it is, even amongst them, do you think that everybody was actually somebody who was a real Shia or just a muhib? You can love the Ahlul Bayt, it's a much different thing to be a Shia, to follow the wilayat and the commands and the umur of the Ahlul Bayt. That's a whole different level. There is different levels of letters they came at different times. The first group of letters that came to Imam Hussein, that was from people that actually respected him, that said, no, come here, start your inqilab, we're going to support you. Because the Khilafah is your haqq. That was their reason. The second group that wrote letters was a combination of different groups. Some Shias, some non-Shia. And they said, look, we want social justice. Right, that fancy term that we hear nowadays too. Economic policies, Kufa is in distress. We don't like the policies of Ibn Ziyad and the Umayyads and things like that. They didn't care about wilayat. They didn't care about imamat. They didn't care about khilafat in the way that it should have been. They only cared about, again, their own personal situation. The dhulm that was happening to them. If they were being taken care of by the Umayyads, then they wouldn't have cared. They wouldn't have invited the imam. And then, that's the second group. The overwhelming majority, that third group, was people who were just opportunists. Who were thinking that, look, Hussein's already on his way here. They wrote their letters much, much later. Hussein is already on his way. It's clear that people are supporting him. Let's jump on the bandwagon. Let's write letters so that when he gets here and he wins and he becomes the Khalifa or the governor, then we can go to him and say, look, we wrote letters too, so where's our handouts? The same thing that many of the so-called Sahaba did in the beginning with the Prophet too, right? They said that, look, we have to work with this guy because later on, when he starts giving out land, when the empire expands, when there's war booty and all this stuff, we want to be a part of that too. Unfortunately, what was still in their minds was that this was just a power play. This is just money. This is politics 101. And that's where a lot of these letters came from. So let's not go with this misconception that many, unfortunately, Muslims, sometimes even Shias have this, that the Shias killed Imam Hussein. No, not at all. Those rightful, true Shias who wrote the letters, most of them were killed right away. They were imprisoned by Ibn Ziyad. They were tortured. They were under house arrest. And the other ones who weren't, they were on the battlefield. They died alongside Imam Hussein. So that's what actually happened. So let's not, misunderstand exactly what's going on. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because the same thing's happening everywhere else too. Just because these people in Medina are upset, like, oh, we have to take out Ibn Ziyad, or we have to take out Yazid, sorry. Well, maybe it's just because their own situation. It's just because of their own money, their own situation. If Yazid had paid them off too, then they probably wouldn't have said anything, unfortunately. That's the unfortunate case. Many people, when you and I, if we're living okay right now in this place, think about it. If Imam Zaman, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajuh Sharif, we're Shias, we recite Dua Faraj, Al-Ajal, Al-Ajal, Imam, hurry, hurry, we're waiting for you. We're all reciting that. And I'm sure we all have a true sadiq niyat in our heart, no doubt. Some, I'd say, the niyat is that, look, I'm suffering from difficulties. Shias are being oppressed. There's this dhulm happening in the world. Imam, I want you to come and fix that. How many people are actually thinking, no, Imam, I want you here because this dunya is yours. This alam, this world belongs to you. You are the rightful Imam and the Khalifa. All these other things, these are all false systems. Everything else, even if I'm doing okay, I'm living a good life, my family is doing okay. If let's say there is no oppressed Shias in the world, no oppressed people at all, everybody was living okay, how many people would be saying Al-Ajal, Al-Ajal at that point too? Say, look, Imam, you want to come? Sure. If you don't, then that's okay too. Sometimes the only reason we actually call to the Imam is because we see this dhulm and things like that happening. We have to check our niyat at the door. Say, look, is your niyat it's one that's descending from the concept of wilaya? Is it the same point why man kuntum mawla fahada ayun mawla? Is that the point? That no, this is a divine system of wilaya. That's the whole point. And if it's not here, everything else will go awry. The result of not following wilayat is that you'll see dhulm, that you'll see natural disasters, that the world will be in chaos. But it's not because of the chaos that we call back to the Imam. We say, look, you are the rightful person here, and that's why we are reciting these du'as. That's why we want you back here. Now the Imam will say, okay, all that dhulm, the poverty, the faqr, all these issues that are happening, you Shias, you know the principles. You have all the things ahead of you. You can take care of that. The Imam doesn't need to come back and start teaching us how to do wudu properly and read namaz properly. He says, we have marajah for that. Imam's not going to come here and do an ahkam class, right? I don't think he will. He's going to come and say, look, I'm waiting for Shias to be ready so that when I give in a command, they're just going to go forward. So that's the kind of Shias that we want to be, not the types of Muslims that existed at the time of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Now the final point that we still didn't answer, which is the most crucial one. But why was Imam Sajjad neutral though? Why didn't he say, look, it's good, we want to get rid of Yazid, these people of Medina, Ahl Medina, they want to fight, let's support. Why didn't he tell the Shias to go and fight too? He didn't. He harbored and protected the Umayyads, the ones who were in Medina, the ones who were being attacked. And when Shias came and again, not everybody came and asked him, unfortunately, but real true Shias like Ja'bir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. He came and said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ya Imam, look, this is what's happening. They're starting these fights, these raids. The Yazidi forces are coming. There's going to be a battle. You are my Mawla. You tell me what to do. And he says, you stay away. You don't get involved in this at all. A lot of these times, the Imams were not allowing people to go and fight in these things. Again, for us, being rationalists, we'd say, but this was a chance. They could have taken out the Umayyads there. They could have taken out Yazid there. So why? Well, a few possible reasons. One we already mentioned. If we go with that second theory that this was happening because of Ibn Zubayr, the Imam said, look, we do not support false leaders. We're not going to take out Yazid so that another Yazidi person comes in there. Yazid is just an example of somebody who doesn't belong there. Why would we want to support somebody like Abdullah ibn Zubayr? Because he's going to do the same stuff. Which you see in the whole battle between Ibn Zubayr and Mukhtar, the same things happened anyway. And again, even Shias there, they didn't understand that, right? And I think the series does a good job of showing how they were confused too. So the Ahlul Bayt say, look, if somebody doesn't have the right niyat, if there isn't the right leadership, we're not going to support that. So that's one. The second is that, look, in Medina, the Imam's thinking, message of Islam, then this needed to happen. The Imam said, I have to stay neutral. Because unfortunately, that's the way that the variables were at that place. You see that same thing, that is what has always happened during the time of all the other Imams too. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You see the same thing right after Saqifa. People say, why didn't Imam Ali go after his haqq? He said, well, he tried. He said, okay, everybody's coming to me. You want to support me? Meet me at the masjid. Shave your heads. Come there right after Fajr or before Fajr. I forgot. He said, if I get a handful of people, the riwayat are different. Some say 5, 7, 11, whatever the number is. He said only, less than 4 or 5 people came. He said, when anybody else asks in the future, tell them about this. They said, this is why I can't get my haqq. And this is the same thing that happened if you look in the future. Why can't Imam Hassan take out Muawiyah? Because his own supporters are not there. Why can't Imam Hussein continue his mission? What's happening in Kufa? Every single time people are abandoning. And the same thing happened to Rasulullah too. Right? This is unfortunately, when I hear the other side, they say, we can't believe you Shias when you talk about how the Muslims just get everything wrong all the time. How can everybody, all these vast Muslims, know that the Khilafah and the Imamat belongs with Ali, but then they all go against it? We can't believe it. So how can you not believe it? The Quran is filled with ayat talking about munafiqeen along with the Prophet. Like, we didn't make that up. Allah is saying, Ya Rasulullah, be careful, there's munafiqeen around you. In history itself, in all of these battles, it's being mentioned. When the Prophet's sending people out, they're saying, no, we're not going to go. We're going to stay around here. And that's why right before the final expedition, the second battle of Mu'tah that was sent out, that's why certain individuals, they stayed behind in Medina because they knew what was about to happen. So they made a power play. And the Prophet said, la'nat on them. He said, okay, if you're not going to go with the army of Osama ibn Zayd, then this is what's going to happen to you. So he sends la'nat on them. This is not new. This is not made up history. This is exactly what's happening. This is a disease that exists in mankind in general. In Muslims, unfortunately, too. When they see people who are being oppressed, it's difficult sometimes for us. Again, we have to be honest with ourselves. If you and I, we're in a public place, we see somebody being abused, yelled at, hurt physically, honestly speaking, what would you and I do? Nowadays, what does everybody do? They whip out their phones. And we laugh, say, oh, they should have done something. What do you mean? What would you do in that situation? Somebody's 2-3 times your size, they're picking on somebody else. Are you going to go and stop them? No, most of us, unfortunately, we probably say, no, I can't get involved. It's not my business. It's not my place. I can't get hurt. I have other things to do. These Muslims are thinking the same way all throughout history. The whole point, one of the main points of remembering this, having azaa over and over again, is to say, look, we are not like those Muslims. We don't want to be like those Muslims. We don't want to be like the Ahl Kufa. We don't want to be like the Ahl Medina, the Ahl Basra. These individuals who allowed after Saqifa, after Imam Hassan, after Imam Hussein, after Imam Sajjad, all throughout the time of the Ahlul Bayt, every single Imam, they're doing the same thing. They're just not supporting them. So why is it so shocking that the Imam, Allah would take his last Hujjah, the 12th Imam, and put him in ghaiba? He says, look, you Muslims are not ready for this yet. I'm going to take him away. You need to train yourselves a bit more. When you're ready, then I can bring him back to you. Get yourselves ready. Every year, remember what happened in Karbala. Make sure you are not just at the same level, but better than the Shuhada of Karbala. If you can do that, then you'll be ready for the zuhur of the Imam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I'll quickly just mention the aftermath of what happened. Right? The battle took place in this area. They were outnumbered. There wasn't much they could do. There was, among the people of Medina, between 4,000 and 11,000 casualties. A huge loss in Medina. Again, obviously the men. 80 of these individuals were known as Ashabul or Ahlul Badr, meaning they were alive, they fought in Badr. So they were these elite ashab that existed from that time, all wiped out. So what the riwayat say, the historians say, is that nobody from that initial time of the Prophet survived after this. The ones who were there at the time of Badr, they were all wiped out in this battle. Moreover, there was 700 huffaz, people who had the Quran memorized, they were killed in this battle too. So sometimes when you have these people, at least other side, when they argue about Quran, preservation, etc., say, well, your individuals, they're the ones who murdered and assassinated and killed 700 people who had memorized the Quran. This was your doing. This was your individuals, people you allowed to come in power, right? So now when we're thinking, and again, this goes even worse than that too. Muslim ibn Uqba, after they had taken out the army outside of Medina, and I can't give you the details because there's children present, but most of you probably have heard the history. Muslim ibn Uqba tells his soldiers, go into Medina and do whatever you want. Don't treat them like Muslims. All of them are going to be like slaves. So you can only imagine what was done to the women and children there. The men were taken, not as prisoners of war, they were turned into the slaves of Yazid. This is how vicious these people were. There's no Islam in them whatsoever. And this is what happened. But this is the result of inaction. This is the result of cowardice. And this is primarily the result of a lack of wilayat. If this stuff had been gone through and channeled through the Imam that was there, then maybe something else would have happened. We don't know. But as you see, every step along the way throughout history, the minute a wali is disobeyed, this is the conclusion, unfortunately. People suffer because of this. And this is why you see in the riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt, people say, why didn't Imam Sajjad do something? We have narrations. He's reported to have said, Ma bin Makkah wa Medina ishun rajulan yuhibbuna. He said, we have less than 20 people who have hub and love for us. What kind of revolution are you talking about? One of the riwayats from the 6th Imam, he says that irtadda an-nas ba'da al-Husayn illa thalatha, that all Muslims became murtad after Karbala except for 3 people. What kind of revolution and inqilab are you expecting when people, their aqidah is gone? When they've allowed for something like this to happen? But even though they witnessed all of this, they saw all this that happened. The Imam was there telling them what had happened. They were there, they were witnesses. They heard the stories. Even there, they still didn't get the message. And we pray to Allah that hopefully we are not the types that when the time does come, that we are not those same sort of cowards. That we learn from lessons like this. We say, no, we don't want to be like these Muslims of that time who abandoned their Imam in such a way. And that's why it's so important that when we talk about the sort of gham and the musibah and masaib, that we shed tears. We remember how sad and difficult it is. But that sadness and difficulty, that gham, the way that our heart breaks when we hear this stuff, our heart breaking is one thing. Now, after it breaks, how are you going to rebuild it? Are you going to rebuild it stronger so that this gham now becomes a catalyst so that you and I can become better and stronger when the Imam comes? This is the power of azad and azadari. And that's why when we have these majalis commemorations, it's important for us. That's why the imams focused. They said, look, come, attend the majalis. Buka, cry. If you can't, pretend like you're crying. Lower your head. Get into this idea because you need to humble yourself. Open your heart, because if your heart is hardened, if it's closed off, nothing's going to help you. Now, when we think about the gham, the musibah of Imam Sajjad, many of us, as we've gone through the ayam of Azza, we start with first of Muharram, the Azza, the gham, it builds up, and in a sense it peaks on Asr Ashur, right? On the Ashura Majlis, or on Sham Ghariba. And we pour out our hearts. We shed so many tears, and we get tired from that too, right? It's physically tiring to go through that sort of masa'ib and musibah, to go through that azah. And many of us might think that, okay, that's it in terms of azah, and that's in terms of the difficulty of the Ahlul Bayt, the gham, the musibah is finished now, right? But no, the gham and the musibah for Imam Hussein and the shuhada end there. But for Zainab and Sajjad, it's just begun. In fact, it gets worse for them. For Imam Hussein, he doesn't have to witness what happens to his family after this. All he has is this tasawwarat in his mind of what's going to happen. But Imam Sajjad has to be the one to go and witness every single thing happening, and unable to do anything. But I would say the gham and musibah for Imam Sajjad doesn't just begin there. He has been witnessing gham, musibah, and difficulty with his family since he was a child. Most people don't know that he was alive when Imam Ali was alive. He was a child there, but he was there. So he is somebody who's witnessing, who's there, who's alive when Mawla Ali is struck in sujood. He is there to witness Fustu wa Rabbil Ka'aba. So he knows what it's like when a mal'oon takes a poison-dipped sword and puts it on an imam. Imam Sajjad sees what happens to Imam Hassan as well. When he sees the ta'but of his uncle being hit with arrow after arrow after arrow, we say Karbala is not the first place that he saw a body being shot with arrows over and over and over again. And maybe this is where Imam Sajjad saw Abbas and his father taking out the arrows from the ta'but of Imam Hassan. And maybe this is where he also saw Zainab coming and trying to take out the arrows from the ta'but there as well. When Abbas and Hussein said, Zainab, this is not something for you to do. This is not your task. He said, no, this is my brother. This is something that I have to do as well. But when it comes to Karbala, Zainab can't do anything for her brother's body at that point. There's nothing she can do there. And now, in Karbala, what is the gham and musibah of Imam Sajjad there? All the other shuhada, they're in the battlefield. They're watching what's happening there. Abbas and Hussein are bringing back the bodies of Akbar, of Qasim, of Awan and Muhammad over and over again to the camps. They're the ones witnessing what's happening there on the battlefield. They are seeing the tears, the gham, the musibah of the women. But Imam Sajjad, this bimari that he had kept him in and out of consciousness until his own riwayat. He says, one day I woke up and I saw a man that I didn't recognize come into my tent. He said, this person, he had strikes on his face, on his head. He had bruises all over his body. He says, it wasn't until I understood that this was my father, this was my Baba saying al-wada to me. He couldn't recognize his own father. And when he saw this, because he was in and out of consciousness, he didn't know that the fighting had started. He didn't know that the fighting was almost over. He said, Baba, what has happened to you? What's going on there? Imam Hussein tells him that the fight, the battle with the Yazidi forces has begun. But Imam Sajjad was not conscious for this. He doesn't know what's happening. He says, Aina Ammu Abbas, Aina Muslim ibn Awsaja, Aina Habib ibn Madahir, Aina Akhi Ali al-Akbar, Aina Qasim, Aina Aun, Aina Muhammad. Where are all the men? Where are all the ashab? Didn't they come and protect you? He says, Nahi bunayya, beta, there's nobody else. I am the only one left here. There's nobody else out here. Even your brother Ali al-Asgher was slaughtered in the battlefield. We're the only ones left here, me, you, and your son. We're the only males left here. Now it's time for me to go out. This is my akhiri salam to you. And when Imam Sajjad hears this, when he's there, he still has, and his father is his imam as well. He says, ask his auntie Zainab, Pupi Zainab, give me my sword, give me my cane, help me stand up. He begins walking outside. He said, where are you going? He says, Baba, I can't just watch you like this. I'll go and fight for you. You wait over here. He says, no, you sit down, imamat rests on you. If you die, then Shiism will die, Islam will die. You have to carry on after this. You have to protect Islam after this. You'll have to go through Kufa and Sham. You have to be there to protect Zainab. He's like, you have to be there to protect Sakina after this. Ajrukum ala Allah. But you see, because of Imam's situation, he still was unable to protect himself. Even when he smells the tents burning, he says, Pupi Zainab, what's happening outside? Zainab is the one who has to come in and say, you are our Imam now. It's Sham Ghariba. Do we stay inside the tent? Do we protect our hijab? Do we die inside this fire? Or do we go outside and have these people look at us, hijab that we've never been seen before? He says, Pupi Amma, you know better than me that Hifz-e-Jan is wajib. We have to go and protect ourselves. It's Zainab that's taking the body of Imam Sajjad. It's taking the mattress that was there, putting him outside. When Shimr is there on Sham Ghariba, when he is there putting his hand on the face of Sakina, when Khuli is there taking the earrings off of the ears of Sakina, Imam Sajjad has to helplessly just watch. What can he do there? Nobody's there. This is the gham and musibah of Imam Sajjad. Ajrukum ala Allah. Imam Sajjad now in the morning when they're taking the Ahlul Bayt, when they're taking these prisoners, when they're taking them, Umar ibn Sa'd says, take them through the battlefield. As they go one by one, Imam Sajjad now, when he saw his father before, he saw him with all these marks. Now as he's going through the battlefield, he sees a body laying on the sands of Karbala. He sees a body that's been trampled. He sees a body that has no head. And Bibi Zainab says, I saw my nephew. He's gone pale in the face. I thought that he would die right there from seeing his father like this. I fell on top of the body of my brother Hussein and said, Rabbana, Rabbana taqabbal minna hadha al-qurban. Ya Allah, accept this qurbani from us. But that's not where the musibah and gham of Imam Sajjad ends. Imam Sajjad now is taken into Kufa. When he's taken into Kufa, relatively he's treated better. But now when he's there and he's being taken into Sham, why is it that Imam is saying Sham, Sham, Sham? Ya Imam Sajjad, why is Sham so difficult for you? Why was it so bad? Weren't you also treated poorly in Kufa? He says, no, you don't understand. In Kufa, we had people who are supporters, who loved us. They came and gave us food. They came and gave us water. They came and tried to give us clothes to cover up the women. He said, but when we got to Sham, they didn't give us food. They threw garbage at us. They didn't give us water to drink. They poured boiling water on top of our heads. They weren't crying for us. They were beating drums. They were singing. They were cheering. They were dancing. There was a parade. There was a tamasha in the bazaar as we were walking there. He says all the way from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, we were made to look at the head of my father in front of the caravan the whole time. Every time I would cry to see the head of my Baba, they would take a spear and hit us on the head. Anytime I wanted to have a majlis, to just shed some tears, I would be hit on top of the head. I had to witness when every time Sakina would cry for us, she would cry for her Baba. Shimra would come with a whip and begin hitting Sakina. I couldn't even go and comfort her. And the final moments when Imam Sajjad and the Ahlul Bayt are finally left alone in the prisons of Sham, when they're finally there left alone in the prisons of Sham, when finally now they're unshackled, when finally they say, give us the head of Hussein, let me see the head of my father, please. They bring the head of Imam Hussein covered there. He opens the cover, he opens up that cover, he sees the head, and he begins to say, after this day, I will never eat lahm and meat again. This is what they've done to the head of my father. Ajrukum ala Allah. And finally now, on this night, when Sakina gets to see the head of her father, Imam Sajjad is able to comfort and take Sakina in his godi and to comfort her finally. Sakina, sorry, I couldn't take care of you all the way from Karbala till now, but now I have the chance. Imam Sajjad only has one night with Sakina. The next morning, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Sakina must be buried there in the zindan. Now, when we fast forward to the ghusl, with the final moments of right before Imam Sajjad, when he was poisoned, before he had died, ajrukum ala Allah, when Imam Sajjad is close to his death after he had been poisoned, when Imam Baqir and the other Shias, they had put down a mattress for him. They said, "You're very weak, lay down on this mattress." He says, "No, remove that mattress, let me lay down on the floor." They said, "Why? You're kamzor, you're weak, the poison is through your body. Let us put you on this mattress." He said, "No." He said, "Well, why are you refusing? Why do you want to lay on the floor?" He says, "You didn't see the body of Hussein, of my father, the way it was on the sands in Karbala. I couldn't tell where the sand started and where the body of my father started. It was laying there. How can I lay down in comfort on a mattress like this?" When the ghusl was being performed by Imam Baqir, when the Shias were there, Imam Baqir began crying loudly. They're saying, "Ya Ibn Rasulullah, Ya Imam, why are you crying like this?" He says, "You don't know the scars, the burns, everything that I can see now. My father was hiding this from me. Look at his neck. This was from the collar that Ibn Ziyad put on him. This was burning his neck. Look at the marks on his back. These are the marks, the whips of shimmer that were there. The same way our mother Fatima had hid from Ali, Imam Sajjad had hid from us." Matam Hussein.
सज्जाद में तेरी हालत देखी नहीं जाती है, सज्जाद तेरी हालत देखी नहीं जाती। कोई नहीं बाजार जाफा सज्जाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा मजमा है कूफियों का, मेरे चलने की जा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सज्जाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सज्जाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार सज्जाद मेरे सर से नो बारी छनी चादर, बलवे में नज़्बी ज़ादी फिर वाई गई दर दर। मिल जाए रिदा मुझको और मेरी दुआ कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सज्जाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, बाजार जाफा सज्जाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार सज्जाद मेरे दिल को ये दर्द सताता है। सरगाजी का नेज़े से जब खाक पे आता है, सर मेरा खुला देखे गम इससे बड़ा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। सजाद चलूं कैसे, लाखों है तमाशाई, याद आता है रे के अब्बास मेरा भाई। फरियाद करूं तुझसे अब तेरे सिवा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद तेरी हालत देखी नहीं जाती है, बेपर्दा मुझे देखे ये बात रुलाती है। सजाद तेरी तरह कांटों पे चला कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में तेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मेरे सर पे रिदा कोई नहीं। सजाद मेरे दिल को ये दर्द सताता है, सरगाजी का नेज़े से जब खाक पे आता है। सर मेरा खुला देखे गम इससे बड़ा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, मौत आएगी जिंदा में मेरी बाली सकीना को, क्या जाके बताऊंगी बीमार मदीना को। गम दिल पे उठाने को अब बाकी बचा कोई नहीं। बाजार जाफा सजाद में ज़ैनब हूँ, दा कोई नहीं। बाजार
कूफे का और शाम का मंजर, कूफे का और शाम का मंजर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का और शाम का मंजर, कूफे का और शाम का मंजर, शाम का मंजर। कब्र पे शब्बीर की करते थे आबिद बुका, शब्बीर हो गई क्या क्या जफा सुनिए शहे करबला।
सर पे किसी के न थी चादर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का शाम का मंजर, कूफे का मंजर, कूफे का एक रसन में बंधे छोटे बड़ों के गले, एक रसन में छोटे बड़ों के गले, बरसर दरबार सब इस तरह लाए गए, बरसर दरबार इस तरह लाए गए। कोठों से बरसाते थे पत्थर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का कूफे का शाम, कूफे के बाजार में मजमे कुफार में, कूफे के बाजार मजमे कुफार में, एक तमाशा सा था हाल सितमगार में, एक हाल सितमगार में। ऐसे में माँ बहन खुले सर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का कूफे का मंजर, तौक से हरगिज़ न था बाबा मेरा सर झुका, तौक से हरगिज़ न था बाबा मेरा सर झुका। हथकड़ी और बेड़ी का कोई मुझे गम न था, हथकड़ी और बेड़ी का मुझे गम न था। देखा नहीं जाता था मंजर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का कूफे का और शाम का मंजर, कूफे का मंजर। बाली सकीना का गम दिल ये नहीं भूलता, बाली सकीना का गम दिल ये नहीं भूलता। सबके तशाने बंधे उसका बंधा था गला, सबके तशाने बंधे उसका बंधा था गला। दर्द से वो रहती थी मुस्तर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का मंजर, कूफे का और शाम का मंजर। मेरी फूफी जान थी बल्वे में जो सर खुले, मेरी फूफी जान थी सर खुले। नेज़ से अम्मू मेरे फर्श पे गिर पड़ते थे, नेज़ से फर्श पे गिर पड़ते थे। हाय चाचा जान का सफ़र, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का मंजर, कूफे का शाम का मंजर, कूफे का शाम का मंजर। लेके गए जब हमें बज़्म सितमगार में, लेके गए बज़्म सितमगार में। 700 कुर्सी नशी बैठे थे दरबार में, 700 कुर्सी बैठे थे दरबार में। तख्ते पे बैठा था सितमगर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा। कूफे का मंजर, कूफे का मंजर, कूफे का मंजर। जब किया सज्जाद से आके किसी ने सवाल, जब किया सज्जाद से आके किसी ने सवाल, गुजरा कहाँ पर इमाम आपको ज़्यादा मलाल, गुजरा कहाँ पर आपको ज़्यादा मलाल। कहते थे या शाम मुकर्रर, याद जब आ जाता है बाबा, दिल मेरा फट जाता है बाबा, कूफे का शाम का मंजर, कूफे का और शाम का मंजर। या हुसैन 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 या हुसैन। मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। वो आबिदे बीमार था, वो आबिदे बीमार था, चलने से जो लाचार था, चलने से जो लाचार था, और शाम का बाजार था, और शाम का बाजार था, और मुस्तफ़ा की बेटियां, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। वो हर सितम सहता रहा, वो हर सितम सहता रहा, पाँव से खून बहता रहा, उससे खून बहता रहा, रो कर जो कहता रहा, रो कर जो कहता, जुल्म व सितम की दास्तां, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन, मौला हक़ इमाम, मौला हक़ इमाम, वो बावफा अब्बास था, वो बावफा अब्बास था, प्यासों का जो एक आस था, प्यासों का जो एक आस था, पानी लिया पर न पिया, पानी लिया पर न पिया, मासूम का एहसास था, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। शब्बीर की वो लाडली, शब्बीर की वो लाडली, सीने पे जो शाह के पली, पे जो शाह के पली, जिसकी अबा बन में जली, जिसकी अबा बन में जली, मुँह पर तमाचों के निशान, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हसन, मौला हक़ इमाम या हुसैन 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 या हुसैन। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद।
अस्सलामु अलैका या अबा अब्दुल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अमीरुल मोमिनीन व इब्न सय्यदिल वसीईन, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न फातिमतुज़ ज़हरा सय्यदती निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या सारल्लाह व इब्न सारही वल वित्रल मौतूर, अशहदु अन्नका क़द अक़मतस सलात व आतैतज़ ज़कात व अमरता बिल मारूफ़ व नहीता अनिल मुनकर। अस्सलामु अलल हुसैन व अला अली इब्निल हुसैन व अला औलादिल हुसैन व अला अस्हाबिल हुसैन खुसूसन सैयदी व मौला अबुल फज़ल अब्बास इब्न अमीर अल-मोमिनीन अस्सलामु अलैकुम या जमीअन शुहदाए करबला व असीरान करबला व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलामु अलैका या गरीब अल-गुरबा, अस्सलामु अलैका या मुईन अज़-ज़ुफ़ा वल फ़ुक़रा, अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। अस्सलामु अलैका या साहिबुल अस्र वज़्ज़मान अलमान अलमान अलमान, अस्सलामु अलैका या शरीकल कुरान, अस्सलामु अलैका या इमाम ज़मानिना अजलल्लाहु तआला फ़रजक व सहलल्लाहु मख़रजक व ज़हूरक व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। सलावत।
तमाम मोमिन और मोमिनात से इल्तिमास है कि अभी जो है वो शबेदारी HIC में हो रही है। तमाम मोमिन और मोमिनात से इल्तिमास है कि उसमें जाके शिरकत कर लें। और इसके साथ ही ये ऐलान में समात फरमाइए, कल जो शबेदारी का प्रोग्राम है 7 बजे जो न्याज शुरू कर दी जाएगी, जो कि 8:15 तक जारी रहेगी, 8:15 तक। उसके बाद नमाज मगरिब की नमाज के फ़ौरन बाद मजलिस अज़ा शुरू कर दी जाएगी और फिर उसके बाद न्याज जो मातमदारी के बाद शुरू किया जाएगा दोबारा। तो तमाम मोमिन और मोमिनात से शिरकत की दरख्वास्त है। बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात।
तो अपने पहले शलवार तो सीधी करो, ये तो ऊपर चढ़ गए।